one of the first things that kind of revealed itself to me when I left corporate and I walked away from everything that previously defined was a different view on the word responsibility. It's actually two words, ability, which to me means your ability to respond in the moment. That's what being a nomad taught me, because I didn't have to carry all this knowledge and learning, didn't have to be in my conscious mind the whole time. In fact, I could just follow, a different intelligence center being my intuition, and know that whatever I needed would be at my fingertips.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Finding the Upside. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am in the studio today and have a special guest that's joining me virtually from Mexico. And her name is my friend, Jenny Lincoln. Hey, Jenny.
Hey, how are you today?
Good. Thank you so much for joining me. I am super excited to have Jenny here with me. We are going to be talking about Jenny's journey, and I'm going to give, if you will, a very short intro of how I know what I know about Jenny's journey, and then I'm going to turn it over to you to give me a little more detail. So, Jenny worked at a high level in management and leadership and is from Australia originally, correct, Jenny?
Correct, yes.
And for the last 10 years, she left the corporate world. And for the last 10 years, she has lived a nomadic lifestyle. And she's going to explain what exactly that is and what her journey encompassed and what she gained from that and why she made those choices. But I'm super excited to speak with her because her and I have chatted, and she's told me that it has brought so much beyond just minimal living and freedom of location and time, but much, much more. So, Jenny, if you would, could you just give a little snapshot of kind of how you got to where you are today and your journey out of corporate and out of the working world and into this lifestyle that you're living right now?
Absolutely. Totally happy to do that. So, let's wind back the clock to 2004. My God, 20 years ago.
Wow, 20 years. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And I've been nomadic for the last 10 of those. But I was working in print media for a print media company that produced magazines and newspapers, Fairfax Media in Australia. And it was just before the advent of online. And we had what we called the rivers of gold, our classifieds, motors, real estate, employment. And
Okay.
all of a sudden, they got attacked and cannibalized by all these overnight online listing houses. And as a management team, we were faced with a really difficult decision. Do we jump in and cannibalize our own revenue, but still maintain our market dominance? Or do we do nothing? Guess what we chose? Do nothing.
You chose
Do
do
nothing.
nothing.
Yes. Well, actually, what we did was we had McKinsey and Co come in, and they did a big review, which I headed up, and our executive team believed that it wasn't going to be as immediate as what everyone predicted. But they thought it was kind of a temporary mirage. But we know what happened with online. It came in and decimated everything.
Yeah.
So as a result of not cannibalizing our own revenue and profits, we ended up having to cannibalize our own people. So I had to end up ripping out about $100 million, and with that came 800 plus redundancies and all that sort of stuff. And after that, I thought, you know what? I just can't do this anymore. I have to change my direction. So yeah, I went from a um, trained in as a behavioralist with basic psychology and coaching degrees, and left finance strategy and moved into, rather than working on the business, working on the people within the business. And so I did that for another 10 years until I left corporate because I still kind of felt empty. And that's when I got on the road. Packed up my
So
house.
I have a question, if I might interrupt you for a minute. So feeling kind of empty, and I want to come back to that. That was really the catalyst for kind of the change in your life, but then you're about to tell me what happened after that. I want to come back to feeling empty because I know a lot of people, can, for one, can resonate with that resonates with me about leaving corporate. So let's come back to that. But after that, you sold your house, and then what happened?
Well, I actually, the true catalyst for it was I used to train in this boxing and kickboxing gym, and one of my fellow boxers was a real estate agent. And he said, I'm looking for properties to rent. And I went, oh, how much would I get for my property? And he told me, and I went, holy crap, why am I living in it?
Ah, okay. Wow.
So I decided that that was the impetus to do what I've always wanted to do, which is just travel as a free spirited person. And so that's what I did. I packed up my house, gave away most of it, put a small amount into a storage unit, and told my elderly mother, I'd be back in 18 months. 10 years later. Oops.
Wow. Wow. So okay, so I mean, I first of all, I am so intrigued by Jenny's story and Jenny's choices. And Jenny, I want to know kind of the early years of you doing that. I mean, obviously, that's one of the things I think a lot of people, myself included, I would love to just be able to go and travel and not really live in one place, just be free to, I've had enough now. Let me go somewhere else. So tell me about what those first few years were like and what kind of led to this 10 years. Was it you thought I'll do this for a while and then tell me about how that played out for you.
Yeah. I kind of had this intuitive feeling that I was going permanently. There was just that sense. But my mind was telling me a different. And so that was the storyline that I was given. It was singly the most liberating thing I did, packing up everything and walking away. I've never experienced such liberty in my life. And I think was that I didn't realize this at the time, but my whole sense of self and my whole identity was tied up in two things. My career, my corporate career. I had been since age 7, all I wanted to be was a powerful, successful businessman like my father. And going back to that point about waking up empty, I ticked all the boxes, and I was a high-powered exec that sat around the boardroom table and got to enjoy all sorts of M&A, mergers and acquisitions, strategy, secret deals, all this sort of exciting
Yeah.
stuff. But just, 1, I was spent, and 2, I just had an empty heart, and I thought, "Well, I've achieved all the things I wanted to achieve. Why do I feel so empty?" And I think that was the beginning of the stirrings of my intuition, because I didn't believe in intuition and stuff like that before. I come from finance, facts, data, left brain, structure, plan for every possible scenario, right? And all of a sudden, this voice within, which was getting very loud and very noisy, was really starting to unsettle me. And I thought there was something wrong with me. And then I realized that disturbia is a good thing. It's actually trying to uproot you because we're not trees, you know, we're agile, multi-sensory, incredible human beings with multiple intelligence centers, not just our mind, our heart and our intuition are two other powerful intelligence centers. And certainly my career had taken me down the path that my mind was everything. And it had become a really silly cage. The more I did mind mastery, the more I got trapped in the cell block of my own mind. So,
Yeah, I first of all, I think, and if I haven't expressed this to you already in the time that I've known you, like it takes an incredible amount of courage to actually, I think there's a lot of people that resonate with your story and feeling like empty and feeling like trapped. And you realize, okay, I've got all these boxes checked. It's all the things that I thought that I was supposed to be or wanted to be, or however that comes for you. And I think a lot of us can attest to that. And then you get there and you're like, ugh. But to actually do something where you say, I'm out. And I'm not going to continue to go down this path. You talk about that intuition and that calling, and that gets louder. I think also, though, there's a lot of people who might have that but drown it out because you have to get still, right? You have to get still to let that come up. I mean, I would agree with you that if you don't listen, it's louder, but there's many people who just keep going and doing to drown that out. So the fact that you were able to have the courage to get still enough or listen to that and then actually make the choice is so empowering. But I also think that there's a lot of people that don't make such a big move as you did. You not only left that world that you thought was what defined success for you, but you completely changed your lifestyle.
yeah,
So, that in itself is a huge jump. And I think what I'm hearing from you is that you just were following this inner voice that was guiding you somewhere, but yet you didn't know exactly where you were going.
yes. And do you know what?
What?
That was so freeing too, because, when you put the financial or strategic hat or whatever leadership hat you have on, whether it's in corporate as an entrepreneur or even as a matriarch or a patriarch, there's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
And I tend to feel that becomes a burden. And one of the first things that kind of revealed itself to me when I left corporate and I walked away from everything that previously defined was a different view on the word responsibility. It's actually two words, ability, which to me means your ability to respond in the moment. That's what being a nomad taught me, because I didn't have to carry all this knowledge and learning and expertise in my frontal lobe, in my conscious mind. I didn't have to be in my conscious mind the whole time. In fact, I could just follow a different intuitive, a different intelligence center being my intuition, and know that whatever I needed would be at my fingertips. And that kind of speaks to the transferability of what we learn in corporate or as an entrepreneur or as a parent. We often get stuck on the technical definition of our knowledge. I was a finance and strategy person. Then I became a behavioralist, right? But all of the wisdom that through the content and expertise we have is totally transferable. And so when I walked away from the labels, but I realized I had such depth and I had such skill, and my evidence list was rebuilt and rewritten as a nomad because I lived in the courage zone 24/7.
Wow.
Yeah, and I chose not to go to English-speaking countries because I thought, "You know what? I've been in them enough." So I went to, the Seychelles, I went to Morocco, I went to Turkey, I went to Central and South America. Wherever they don't speak English, I went. And interestingly, you talk about the certain silence, not being in an English-speaking country all of a sudden meant that I wasn't tuned into everyone's conversation. Like, there is so much noise, and I find this when I go back into what I call, what we call first world countries or English-speaking countries. All of a sudden, it's like, "Oh god, I can hear that this person's got problems with their boyfriend, and this one's got problems with their landlord," and it's just noise. And when I'm in foreign countries, all their conversation is melodic, It's like music in the background. It's not problems, and noise.
So it almost gets, you hear it, but it's not in your ear and in your space, in your headspace.
Correct, it's not invasive.
Yeah, okay.
And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's something that I hadn't thought about. And obviously you have to live that experience, right? To, I guess, recognize that, and that's what you came to recognize. But I think also just, everything that you said, I want to respond to a couple things. First off, you talked about, the things that you were part of your identity, or the things that kind of redefine, which your career, which I think is true for a lot of people
Mm,
all over the world, no matter what country you come from, your career or your business or whatever it is, what you do, right? What you do is what you do. It's not who you are. And we have that a little bit mixed up, right? No matter
yeah,
where you come from. And then you also talked about just the attachment. I want to get into that a little bit more. The attachment of the things you had, your house, the things that you own, and want to get into that some more and dive into that a little bit. But you know, I think that it's so layered. You coming to understand that and getting this freedom beyond what you thought of just being able to go and live, but as you just said, the noise of just your location and being enmeshed, that's the word I call it, like
mm,
enmeshed in the community you're in, you no longer are if you are kind of just visiting for a while, or I'm here for a bit, and it's a more transient type of uh uh role, or whatever you might call it. And that does have other layers of freedom and things that you can unburden yourself with. But also wanted to respond to this, in your career and having to have all the knowledge and keep it in your frontal lobe. My gosh, like just being able to say, I can clear all this out. The the mental load that that causes day in and day out in people that are working in a career, in any kind of job, in any kind of business that they own or whatever, that in itself just drains your
mm,
creative energy, your vitality. It can do all of that. It can have great highs, but boy, can it be draining. And just the freedom that you gained from being able to just kind of, clean the disc, so to speak, right? Just let all of that empty out. I can only imagine how much freedom that brought for you and made space for other things, right?
mm,
Made space for other things. So, talk to me about that. When you were able
mm.
to do this and kind of, transition and just from a mental space, what was it that you were able to bring in. Talk about that, and then I wanna get into later about kind of the belongings and the freedom that
Yeah,
you gained from living minimally and all of
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. I think this is some really important things. When I first left corporate, I kinda did a counter and I went into every alternative and contemporary work you could find. So I became an energy healer. I did theta healing. I worked with Dr. John Demartini for 7 years, being one of his key facilitators on the breakthrough process. I just did anything that was alternative. I went ultra woo-woo, right?
Okay.
And I studied stuff with Bruce Lipton and the biology of belief and how we can totally recode ourselves from the inside out. And one of the things that I learned really quickly that I really honed in was the difference in the power of our unconscious mind and our conscious mind. And I'm going to give you an illustration, but I know I haven't got the exact numbers right. And it's funny because it doesn't bother me anymore. Once upon a time, as an accountant, I'd be like, "Oh, I have to have exactly the right numbers." Um, but it's contrast. Through contrast comes clarity is one of my favorite mantras. And so I want people to understand the contrast. Our conscious mind processes at around about 20 bytes per second of content. And our subconscious minds process something like it's either 400 billion or 4,000 billion bytes per second. In a visual sense, that is the subconscious mind sees a picture, every dot or every pixel in a picture. Our conscious mind sees 10 dots. And so really quickly I thought, why am I trying to jam everything into this puppy? Like, it's just going to be like our old computers where you had to do Control Alt Delete to reboot because you had too many. Remember when you had too many screens open, too many folders open,
Yep.
and and your laptop would hang.
Yep.
So we overload and jam so much stuff into our conscious mind because we think we have to remember, but our subconscious mind can actually help you remember. Like, and again, it's about redeveloping and refining your evidence list to see the evidence and the instances that this happens. So, I now never leave the house without anything, and somebody's house because it's not my house, without the things that are important to me, my passport, my wallet, their keys, and whatever else, or my mobile. And even if I leave one behind, my intuition will go, "Did I turn the gas off?" And then, or back in the old days when I used to iron my clothes, it would have been, "Did I turn the iron off?" And you'll find that there is a prompt. There's always a prompt if you're open to seeing these wonderful prompts that we have all around to make sure that we have everything we need. And they're just simple, easy, silly little examples, but it happens with everything in life. It's always there. If you clear the clutter and tune out of all the noise and listen to the inner voice and the nudges that whatever higher power or the universe or whatever you believe in is giving you, or your own divinity with you. So I think that is the really full thing that gave me so much liberation because you know what? I just went, the universe has got my back. I go first. I take the first step. The universe follows. It supports me, and I have evidence long, 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 to the point that when I was heading to a house in the Pyrenees, there had been a flash flood the day before, and I picked up the homeowner's car. They had given me instructions to drive to this place, and I got to a particular turn off, and the road had been washed away. And there was only one road in. to this particular tiny village that I was staying in. And the maps, I had offline maps, sort of Google Maps, but I couldn't find anything. But I remember a friend of mine, the homeowner, had a friend that I was chatting to for a hiker, and she was telling me about all these wonderful fire trails that she could drive into and then hike through. And I thought, wonder if I could find one of these fire trails. So I turned around and started heading back. And then there was this guy who looked kind of homeless and a bit rough around the edges, and he was hitchhiking. And I thought, I'm going to pick him up. And I'm deep in the Pyrenees of France. And I say, Parlez-vous anglais? And he goes, Oui. And so then I said to him, You look like a local. I'm trying to get here. Well, actually, first of all, I asked him where he was going and where he wanted to live to. And then I said, Do you know how to get here via the fire trails? And he said, Yes, I can show you. So we went and he showed me the exact place where I could follow the fire trail to get onto a different road that then would take me to the village that I needed to get to. And I took him to where he had to get to and then went back to that.
Wow.
Now I have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of illustrations of that where they're synchronous divine moments, but they're always there, they're everywhere.
Yeah. Well, that's unbelievable. And I think a lot of what you said, that resonates with me, and I believe that wholeheartedly. There are signs everywhere. I think you even said that, right? Like,
Mm,
and whatever it is that it is, like whatever it is, where it's coming from for you, whatever you believe, the universe, the divine, God, some higher power, whatever it is, it's all the same. It's all the same. But I think it's being able to be open to that and listen to it and
mm,
have the trust and faith in it, whatever it is. Because as you said, you could have just kept driving and your conscious mind would have said, no, we don't pick up hitchhikers, right? Your conscious mind might have said that, but
mm,
you were tuned into
mm,
and actually got that message. And
mm,
wherever that came from, like, agreed. I think, what it's feeling like for me is we talked about this getting still and being able to listen, right? But I also think that's the first step. And then
mm,
as you start to trust and you start to see these signs and be open to them, it just gets more powerful, your
mm.
ability to tap into that.
Totally, totally. And, it's exactly the same as the inner radar that I developed as an auditor when I first started work with PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Yeah.
You kind of just have this sense. The numbers just don't look 1, they don't look right, and 2, they don't feel right. There were so many times where I would have trend analysis, so one of my staff would come to me and bring something, and I'd go, "This doesn't feel right. Look deeper," you know? And so I think this is the real battle that I think we have as intellectual beings. We're so hooked into our conscious minds, but we're multi-sensing, multi-dimensional beings. We have a sensory perception that is far beyond
Yeah.
what we tap into. And it's the stuff that brings salmon back to where they were little salmon embryos, and the monarch butterflies that come down to the northern mountains in Mexico, and all of these other, like the dolphins that have all this amazing sonar and intellect. When we poo-poo all of that as kind of, what's it, like animalistic and primitive, I think it's far more sophisticated.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we have an opportunity to bring that into our work, into our corporate, our entrepreneurial. I think to get it and see it more in entrepreneurialism because there's kind of this norm now where entrepreneurs can follow their gut more, not so much the evidence and the facts.
Very true. Yeah.
So I think we need to, we really need to start paying more attention and delving and having better relationships with our heart space, which is heartfulness, which to me is what mindfulness is, because every mindful exercise actually balances, sets you into your heart through breathing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And intuition needs to have a higher and more important role in our leadership and our business prowess, I feel.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, and I think you're right. I think I have hope that this is starting to become more and more, I wouldn't say mainstream yet, but more accepted, maybe
Yeah,
more awareness. There's more awareness about this. Um,
yeah, yeah.
but yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, we are multisensory beings, right? And everything, you and I are very aligned on our approach to leadership, right? We're dealing with human beings. And
Mm,
so we can't just rely on the numbers and the
no,
business side of things. We have to holistically, approach the people that are in our care and the people that are carrying out our dreams, or the people that we are together creating our dreams, our mission, whatever it is.
yeah.
We have to address all parts of someone, and that's what's so crazy to me is that, heart space, like anything that would say that is so what, and what corporate even wants to touch.
Mm,
They don't want to even touch that, but we are starting to see more talk about this. And as you said, in the entrepreneurial space, a lot of business owners, that's the easier connection, I think, because if you talk to them about, you follow your gut, right? Like, okay, we can open that door a little to make them understand that connection. And then
mm,
it's not just for them, but it's
yeah.
for all the people around them as well. So, I'm interested to what you would think, or to ask you this question. If your, I don't know, 30-year-old self would hear you saying this now, what would she say?
Well, she had a very similar experience. I had a very spiritual interaction with someone in my 30s, and my response was, "What a load of baloney! What a load of shit!"
You shot it down right away, huh?
I was so left brain, and I came from a commercial family where emotions were a dirty word. And, now I talk about and I teach emotional fitness, and that emotions are your energetic emailing system that has really important messages. I'm all about the purity of emotions and feeling them, and, they're not positive and negative, they're treble and bass like music, so they come together in a wonderful symphony. And I also, teach about leading through the lens of love, which I thought was a load of bullshit.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So what would I say to my year-old self? I would probably come to the intuitive aspect.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think, and the reason why I asked that question and kind of wanted to cue that up is I think, isn't it interesting? And I could definitely say this for my own journey as well, is that you have to go through that journey and gaining that wisdom and transformation and kind of changing what you think. And again, got to be open to it, because nothing changes if you're not open to changing it, right? You could be
Yeah,
stuck in that left brain your entire life. There are some people who are. But yeah, like, you never would have thought at this point in your life, looking back, that this would be what you were saying, thinking, believing, doing, right? Like, and you had to go through that journey in order to have that awakening or that understanding or that
yeah,
experience, I would assume.
absolutely. I agree. And I come back to one of my favorite mantras, through contrast comes clarity. You know, it's like when you look at art or photography and you look at an artist and a photographer's use of shadow, and there's a lot of talk about dealing with our shadow side. And when you look at photography in particular, like black and white, it can be really powerful. And you see a silhouette or you see the different shades of grey. Well, I think 50 shades of grey, won't go there. But all the different shades, and then this silhouette that cuts through the picture, and it draws your eye to a point on the picture or a point on the painting. And I feel that shadow and light and the interplay and the contrast is the same thing for us. When we have a shadow moment and we experience that in the dark, kind of gloomy aspect, it draws our eye to that. And we are forced, hopefully, to do some inner and reflective work. And we can then go, oh, well, what is this showing me? Rather than judging it as saying, well, that's pretty bad, we can get curious and say, what's the invitation here?
Right.
What is this showing me? Is it just a straight contrast, which is, you know what? I seem to work effortlessly in this environment where I am given more liberty or freedom to use my own individual talents than, say, in this project that I'm working on, where I have to be really structured,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so we're constantly getting light and shade, contrast moments to help us navigate our way to our authentic selves and our truth, what works
Yeah.
for us. And so I think if we could look at things differently like that, it's really powerful.
Yeah. And being curious about, like, you need that comparison, but being curious about the dark, not just, okay, let's just dismiss it, really examining the light and dark and what is this showing me. But, also just about the whole statement of comparison, like, we need comparison, right? Is that maybe that's the trigger that helps us kind of grow and evolve? Because if you don't have the comparison, then you know what you know, and you're kind of one lane, one note, no change, no evolution. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I
exactly.
love that.
And it's the same with Disturbia as well, which everyone goes, "Oh, no, discomfort
Yes.
Disturbia. No, I don't do that."
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so much talk about that too, and we could bring that to this too. It's like getting uncomfortable. That's where the magic happens, right? We don't, as humans, want to be uncomfortable. That's why so many people shy away from that, but it's seeing the opportunity in that chaos, in that storm, in that dark, whatever, what it is, if you want to, whatever it is you want to call it, being
Mm,
able to go through that and have that experience allows you to then have a different perspective and have a different frame of reference they didn't have before. But
mm,
again, you have to be open and curious, open to it and curious about it.
yeah,
But
I agree.
I love that. I'd love to ask you some questions more about,
Right.
becoming, living this nomadic lifestyle. Obviously, minimalism. These are things. Minimalism is kind of a trend that people have been talking about for a while. But I really want to talk to you about the freedom that being nomadic and kind of getting your belongings down to, I think you said, a small storage space that you have some things put away, and then traveling. I've seen you in person traveling with, I think you said, one suitcase and a backpack, and that's it. um, Talk to me about the experience of doing that, living in that way, and what freedom. Talk about what it is that you gained from that and what you discovered through becoming and adopting this lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah, I think there's some great learnings here, so I really am happy to share these insights. I think the first thing is that when I packed up everything and I now don't have a storage unit. Like, I only own 22 pounds, 10 kilos. That's the extent of my possession. and, sometimes I think that's too much.
Okay.
But, so what I'd like to do is talk about and introduce a wonderful model called the Be Do Have model. And it's one of my favorite models, and I usually use it to help people understand their self identity. Because the biggest gain I had through embracing minimalism and becoming a nomad is that I totally redefined me. I found my truth because I was no longer distracted by my havings, everything I own. It's very distracting and very comfortable, right?
Yes.
And they are outside us. And then when I left corporate, and then when I left my own kind of freelance writing and consulting, and then I had no career, which was really scary.
Yeah.
And I actually thought, "My God, I'm throwing everything away." That's one of the really big challenges is you think, "God, I'm turning my back on 40 plus years of investment. What am I gonna do?" But it's all fear-based, it's the fear of loss pretty much underwrites everything. And so I
Yes.
thought,
Yes.
if I don't have a reputation, what will happen? How will I earn money? Do I need to earn money? Somewhere along the lines, I do need to earn money again. Um, so there's all these sorts of things. But again, the doing, and I think this is why people are so addicted to busyness, is because it gives a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose. But guess what? Again, it's outside of that. So when our havings or our doings are threatened or taken away from us, we start to crumble. You think about, uh, let's go outside ourselves because it's always easier to look at somebody else rather
Okay.
than ourselves initially. But think about elitist sports people that retire. They more often than not fall into a deep depression because their whole schedule, routine, and everything is defined by them achieving and practicing to achieve and making titles and, breaking records and doing all this sort of stuff. It's
Yeah.
how they're totally defined, right? Think about actors, performers, uh, that age out, musicians that age out. Think about Madonna and how many faces she's
Yeah.
having,
Yeah.
you know, and the pressure because we're not what we used to be or what the market expects. We don't have the beauty or the agility of a sports person or the voice,
Yeah.
same thing. Think about, entrepreneurs that build up their businesses and and then they sell them,
And then
freeze
they
'em,
sell it. Yeah.
and then they have to go off to India to discover themselves, and they fall into another deep, dark valley depression, and because their whole self-identity is tied up with what they've walked away from.
Yeah.
Yep, they're catched up. So, it's the same thing for us. When we walk away, maybe we're retrenched, maybe we have a career change, maybe we're at a point where we wanna retire and do something different, and we're faced with all the same things because they're outside of us. And so, when I took away the having and the doings, I was left with that little center circle, which was, who does Jenny be? If I strip all that away, and that was freaking scary, and I ended up in a 3-year depression because I was so heavily defined by my corporate persona, and every day I would wake up and none of it was relatable, and I thought, "What's wrong with me? I'm broken, I'm fixed, I have this wonderful life," but nothing resonates. I just felt in such a space of hopelessness. And I remember laying on the floor of my office one day, and I just thought, "I can't do this anymore." I made my peace, and I thought, "I just cannot live this way anymore." And then the shard of light fell upon my heart space, and my intuition said to me, "All you have to do is breathe." And in that moment, I realized that my whole sense of existence came from my heart space rather than my head. And so what I realized that my depression was actually a really powerful form of metamorphosis. I was breaking down all my labels and self-definition. And so if I was to use the analogy of a house, renovating a house, right? You've got this
Yeah.
dream of what you wanna put on this beautiful piece of land, but you've got this big structure, and so you take off the roof and you take out the wall, you're left with the foundation, and that's what I was left with. And then I thought I kinda got a bit of a reprieve part of the way through my depression, where I thought, "Oh, wow, I can now build something new." And I started to build the new things, but the spark didn't hold. And I just thought, for F's sake,
Yeah.
like, what does it take? And then I thought, "Oh, holy hell, I actually cannot build the truth of me on these foundations. They won't support it, so I have to blow the foundation." So that my nomadic life was the end of blowing up those foundations, and now it doesn't matter where I am, who I'm with, what I'm doing, what I own or don't own. I know that my heart space is open. I manage my own peace. I am totally, open to receivership of whatever comes into my space, and I'll see
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
'cause I have the space to do it, and I don't have to keep proving who I am to myself. I've just I am enough, and I'm really happy, and I love the simplicity of me.
Wow, I mean, that just as you were explaining that whole, evolution, and what I was thinking about, what really strikes me is, I mean, obviously, you saying this, your depression was the transformation, but
Mm,
really because it's this whole journey stripped you of everything that
mm,
this is what you're relying on, right? This is what you're relying on. So that's so beautiful and enlightening. And I can imagine like such freedom from realizing that and shifting it to this is an opportunity now to be totally open. Like now I'm not relying on anything. Nothing's defining me, only this.
mm,
And I think it's a great metaphor for really our the way we live, right? And in our cultures, that we are fooled to think of what we need to have, to be, to do, as you said. And what a gift to be able to strip that all away and get down to just what's right here and rely. Like that's what really struck me. Rely on only Jenny right here. Jenny. It doesn't matter who you're with, where you are. That is such a aspirational freedom hack. Like that's the only way I can describe it. And the
yeah,
other thing that I wanted to respond to is, you gave so many great examples and so many great analogies. I
mm,
think I can even think, as you were saying, the athlete that competes or the actress that ages out or, all of those things. And even your own experience, I can relate to even that people that I know in my own family. My dad for 70 years, he was a salesman, put a suit on every single day,
Yeah.
and, worked for a very big, well-known retail company, and they said, "It's time to retire," and he wasn't ready, and that
Yeah.
was his entire identity. Yes, he still had a beautiful life and a family around him, but he lost a part of that, and it's very difficult for people if you're not open to this or exposed to this or aware of this to be able to get to the other side of the opportunity of it. He struggled quite a bit.
Yeah.
And even my son played football his whole life and was certainly not going to the NFL. Like, I'm not even talking about at that level. But when he stepped away from football for various reasons and he needed to make that choice, he went through a little bit of identity struggle, and maybe still is, where, like, that was such a part of my identity, and now who am I without that? So I think the critical point here is that if only we could know not to put so much stock in the havings, beings, and doings.
Yeah.
Because when we do that and make those things part of
Yeah.
our identity and we lose it,
Yeah.
that's, I think, the critical tipping point to whether we're going to come out to the other side and go through this transformation and realize the opportunity,
Yeah.
or struggle and suffer the loss of that.
Yeah. I agree. I think you absolutely nailed it. And to me, it's one of the key codes and clues is in the word human beings.
Yeah.
We're human beings, not human doing. And
Yeah.
yet,
Oh, that's good.
but that yeah, and so who we be is the internal piece that we kinda maybe do if we have spare time, or maybe
Yeah.
it's what we do after we retire, or it's kind of what we do when we go to a retreat center or something like that, but it's fleeting. But it's the internal foundation, and that's why it's I think that's why people always say to me, "God, you're fearless." And I go, "No, I'm not. I have fear, and I get an anxiety around really bizarre things. Sometimes I just get it and I go, what is going on? Like, why do I feel this way? And it's a human response. You know, this part of our humanness, and it doesn't mean that we've got something wrong. There's a message, and that's what I think is really important, is this whole thing about getting curious and dialing in and doing some reflective work. Introverts do so naturally and very well. Apply to the introverts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And ask yourself, what is this showing me? Because it's all feedback. It's all here trying to guide us to our truth and put us on our path of purpose. It's right for us. It may not be right for you. It may not be right for half the audience. But it's going to be right. It's going to be aligned. Let me change my words, please, because I think language is really important. I want to move away from right and wrong to aligned and missing out. And I feel that all of this feedback to show us what's in alignment with our truth and our purpose. And it's not a case of right or wrong. What feels aligned. And it's not just alignment here, it's alignment at a heart and an intuitive level. You need this alignment across the three intelligent pieces.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I love that. I agree. I um I was also thinking as you were describing, this heart space, getting to this heart space, and you were talking about the havings, the beings and doings, but more about the career. I think also, and I think in our chat before we did this recording, we talked a little bit about also the attachment, not just to identity of what we do, but the things we have, and I think so many people struggle with that, and again, I think it's because not understanding kind of this, let me peel it all away because it's not this, it's this, right? But talk to me about that for a bit. Did you struggle with letting go of certain things? And for people that struggle to do that, because I know even in my own life, when you come from a family, which I do, um, my mom saves everything,
Yeah.
saves everything. And there's a clear attachment. Maybe it's generational. I mean, she is 87.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's an attachment to the thing because there's memories tied up in it. I understand that. She does too, but she's not able to, and I think a lot of us are like this, peel away. The memory isn't in the thing, it's
Mm,
here, right? So,
correct.
did you experience that in any way? And what would you say about the process of doing that and speeding it up, if you will, or having a shift to be able to let go of things?
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah. I'm really glad that you brought us back to this because I think this is another fundamental thing that we need to free ourselves from. And I think this conversation can do that very
Yeah.
simply. And so the first place I want to start with is the universal law of impermanence, which underlies the Buddhist uh, ethos. And the law of impermanence is that everything comes together and then it falls apart. We see this ebb and flow role model to us in nature every day, night and day, sunrise, sunset. We see it in the tides twice a day, high tide, low tide. We see it in the seasons, winter, spring, summer, fall. Fall is destruction, death. We need to understand that there is a natural law of impermanence. As human beings with our left brain, we try to defy that law pretty much every minute of every day because we don't
Yeah.
want to let go.
Yeah.
And the reason why we don't want to let go is because those things define us. Our partner defines us, our job defines us, our brands define us, the food we eat, the alcohol we drink, the restaurants we dine in,
Mm.
everything is defines us. And then you have all these perceived definitions of you from everyone you meet, from the cash register cashier that you smile at when you're buying a loaf of bread or a coffee, to your family, your friends, strangers that you meet. Everyone has a perceived instant version of you. And what happens is when we get attached to the having, and the doings, and then how people see us, they're just they're false identities. They're everything is outside of us.
Yeah.
And so it it's about embracing the law of impermanence and knowing that if something falls apart, then it's showing you there's a new opportunity for ascension. And the reason why I talk about it as ascension, can I share a quick story about when I did my first paragliding?
Yeah.
So I'm in Medellin in Colombia. This is in the middle of COVID,
Oh
not that
boy.
it's happening, but anyway, down to there. And I was, I ran off a mountain strapped to a 19-year-old
Wow.
off the top of the, oh God, what are the mountains? I can't even think of what the mountains are, in the Andes. And we were meant to land in the middle of Medellin. And I thought, oh, wow, that could be really cool. And then some really bad weather came in. We got delayed for 2 hours, and the guy said to me, "We're gonna have to come back and land here." And I kinda went, "Oh, oh." was a bit of a I don't and it's really interesting because for the next 2 hours, I stopped and reflected on, first of all, why am I like, I'm still bloody running off the Andes, top of the Andes, like, I'm still gonna have the most amazing experience. Why am I getting upset or having this disturbia within or a triggering within about coming back to the same spot? And I realized, "Oh my god, I see that as not forward progress," which I've been conditioned through all my life.
Yep.
So that was my first lesson from paragliding. The most important one was we got into the swirl with all these birds, and we were just swirling on the thermal, which was really cool, and I'm a bird person, I love birds, and I was just so, uh, just I was mesmerized by the birds and the fact that I was beside them and, like, we were kind of tilting like they were tilting, and I wasn't conscious of anything else other than riding the thermals with all these birds, and it was just the most incredible kind of divine experience. And then all of a sudden I looked down and went, "Ooh, that's a long way down, a long way up." And then I saw where we took from, and I thought, "Holy crap, here am I in my life, I get so judgmental around me spinning, going around in circles." And in this single moment, I realized each time I create a loop, well, when I was paragliding, there was an ascension process. I didn't even notice it.
Yeah.
Like I was another 500 meters up from where we took off. And this happens to us every single time. So it was such a big penny drop for me that around my own judgment, that when I thought, oh my God, I'm back here again, judge myself and I allow my inner critic, sometimes my inner saboteur, to step into that door and into that space and start berating and bullying me. And then I thought, well, it's just like paragliding. When I come back to the same place, I am not the same person. I've had an ascension moment. And so such a powerful, really important thing about when we have an experience, like there's
Yeah.
always an ascension moment. And yet we often don't see that. So even when we're in the dark or in the blue or whatever, we're ascending.
Yeah, and I think it's also, as you said, like, that's amazing story, and I think it's also, as you said, it's all of the things that have conditioned us, that we continue to battle, and need to battle and stay aware of, because it can rob us
Mm.
of that experience of really just being in that moment, not checking off a box that I was back here, measured up to there, all of that. Just really about the entire experience, not measured against some yardstick that probably isn't yours anyway, to just appreciate it for that experience and what it was meant to be for you. So that's quite a story. I was seeing you with those birds as you were telling me that story.
Yeah. And let me just close the loop because you were asking me about what someone can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's about taking these sound bites that we've kind of been talking about, these little nuggets. It's about being aware that we're attached and that we're at a
Yeah.
natural border of something. Like 3 years into my nomadic life, my 21-year relationship with my partner came full circle, and we uh, decided to split in grace because we realized that we were no longer the right companions for the next stages of our lives. I loved being in my courage zone, but she wanted stability and put down roots. So we could have fought that. and it was not very nice, but, we're still best friends. We still have a big love because we saw that we had come full circle, and we wanted to be unconditional with our love, so we let each other go. And I think sometimes people think that this sort of thing, like, and particularly when I talk about leading through the lens of love, because making hard, tough decisions like that is leading through the lens of love. And it's not all flipping unicorns and rainbows. It's about taking responsibility for the internal stuff and making the hard decisions, you know? So I think like really simple takeaways for people is understand that there is a universal law of impermanence. And we see it role modeled to us by nature in every day. And it's an opportunity for a new beginning or an ascension or a pivot or a different opportunity. And when these moments are forced upon us, it usually because we are holding on to a
So tight.
pole being dragged through the edge backwards to an evolution that we need, but we don't want to let go for the fear of loss. You know, financial, relationship, influence, position, you know,
Whatever it is.
whatever
It's
it is.
so true, and I love, that you brought back the law of impermanence and relying on that and seeing it in nature every day, right? The sunrise, sunset, the seasons, right? Even the destruction. It's funny because it's a great way to close because looking for the opportunity. That's what this podcast is all about. Finding the
Yeah,
upside is there's always an opportunity, always. Finding it is the challenge, but it has to be that switch to say, okay, this is a necessary ending. And this is whether you've outgrown each other in a relationship, whether you've outgrown that experience, because that happens as well, whether
yeah,
you've outgrown these things, it's a necessary ending,
yeah,
and it brings the opportunity of a new beginning. And just understanding that with that law of impermanence is such a crucial lesson and something to keep top of mind and applies to everything. So
yeah.
I love this. Jenny, thank you so much. This has been incredible. I could talk all day with you. So we might have to do a part two. We'll see. Um, Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I thoroughly enjoyed our time together and I appreciate you being with me. For those of you that have been watching or listening, thank you for joining us today. Jenny, I'm going to put your information in the show notes if people want to reach out to you, and on social, all her information will be in the show notes. So thank you for joining me today. Again, Jenny, thank you so much.
Okay.
Those of you who are watching, we will see you next time on the next episode of Finding the Upside. Bye for now.